Welcome back to Normalized PTSD. Today we have Rick Johnson. Rick Johnson is the CEO of Voi. It's a really interesting company, and they're working in part with AI to help curb the suicide rates in our community. I hope you find this informative. Welcome, Rick. You are CEO of Voi Inc. And I was just curious, you've had quite the journey to get here. So if you'd take just a second and tell us a little bit about where you come from, how you got to where you are.
Sure. So I'm Rick Johnson. I was born in Vermont. I attended the U.S. Naval Academy and then flew for the Marine Corps. In '93, I joined the Marine Corps Reserve. So I was an A6 intruder pilot and then became a C-130 pilot. And when I joined the reserves, I went to the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy in Boston, and then went to law school up here at Vermont Law School and became an assistant attorney general for the state of Vermont. In 2003, I was mobilized with my C-130 squadron and went to Iraq, stayed on active duty after that, went to the Naval War College in Rhode Island for a year, then went down to Norfolk, Virginia, redeployed to Iraq again, and then became commanding officer of the C-130 squadron, stayed on active duty for that, then became the Vice Chief of Staff for the Marine Corps Reserve, then served as the Chief of Staff for the Reserve, and also as a Deputy Group Commander for a number of different military Marine Corps units. And then we moved back from Virginia up here to Hanover, New Hampshire, where I live now. I served as the Associate Director at the Dartmouth Institute, which is a big health policy think tank. Then went back on active duty, went to Afghanistan as an Inspector General for the Secretary of Defense, came off of active duty, retired in 2015, helped set up the innovation laboratory at Dartmouth-Hitchcock, and then started working for my current company called Voi, V-O-I. I've been there since 2017. I'm now the CEO of the company. We're located in Springfield, Vermont, and we're focused on reducing and ending suicide in the United States and around the world.
Wow, that's an impressive resume, sir. So what led to wanting to get involved with preventing and identifying suicides and helping in that aspect?
Yeah, so as a commanding officer and then a deputy group commander, and then both as the vice chief and the chief of staff, I had a number of Marines and sailors who either attempted or completed suicides. When I served as the chief and the vice chief, one of my duties was to investigate after an attempted suicide or a completed suicide to understand kind of the root cause analysis of what happened. And, during that analysis, I had to, interview, friends, family, unit members, loved ones to find out what happened, and just saw the devastation these events had on everyone, and vowed that when I retired in 2015, if I could find a company that was working on solving this problem, I would jump at the chance. I connected with a national expert on suicide prevention up here at Dartmouth College. He's a professor here. And he and I started working on it. And then in 2017, we became the Voi, V-O-I.
We'll speak to your mission statement. Voi's mission is to deliver the most comprehensive, innovative solutions to help hospitals, health system, government agencies, educational institutions, families, and communities detect, intervene, support, and care for people at risk for suicide. So touching on that, what is the two parts to that, the innovation solutions for Voi?
Yeah, so as you're probably aware, suicide numbers have been at record levels. COVID-19 has made it a crisis. We're talking about 132 to 140 Americans every day will commit suicide. And a large number of those are veterans, military personnel, prisoners. So, and one of the reasons the numbers have not changed is there's not a quick, scalable, and accurate way to identify people at risk. And there's not really an ongoing way to provide support and monitoring to keep them safe once you've identified them at risk. So what we've done is we've taken the old models from the 20th century, and recreated them using 21st century technology. So we have broken the problem into how do you accurately identify people at risk of imminent suicide? And when I say imminent, I mean in the next 72 hours. There's a lot of tools out there that can tell you what your lifetime risk is, which is important, but it's not going to tell you over the next 72 hours whether you are, potentially going to attempt or complete a suicide. So our detection is called Voi Detect. And then once you've identified people at risk, and I'll note that our tools are a lot more flexible than just suicide. They can be used for any type of behavioral health problem, whether it's substance abuse, depression, anxiety, PTSD. But right now we're focused on suicide prevention. So once you've identified these people, how do you actually keep them safe? And we've created a tool called Voi Reach, and it provides a live behavioral health coach who will work with that patient and the patient's natural support network. So the coach will say, who in your life is going to keep you safe and help you get healthy? And the individual will identify, 3 to 5 people, whether it's the spouse, children, friends, unit members, whoever they think is a positive influence in their life. And then the coach can work with the patient and the natural support network and provide continuous monitoring using our AI, artificial intelligence engine, which is constantly scanning for any changes in risk. And the coach can provide educational materials, can provide remote assessments to make sure everyone's staying healthy, and also provide guidance. So most loved ones want to help someone suffering from a behavioral health issue, but they don't know what to say or what to do. So they typically don't say anything or don't do anything, which just exacerbates the situation. So the coach can say, hey, here's 3 things you can say to your loved one who has PTSD. Here's 3 things you can't say or you shouldn't say. Here's 3 things you can say to someone who's suicidal. Here's 3 things you shouldn't say. So it provides, as we named it, reach. It gives you extensive reach to keep someone safe.
Okay. And to just jump into Voi Detect a little bit, that assessment's really quick to do, correct? It takes just a few minutes.
Yeah, the beauty of our assessment is it takes less than 2 minutes to do. It typically even takes less than that because our artificial intelligence, the algorithm, once it gets to the proper level of confidence, will end the assessment. So most assessments take about a minute to do. The other beauty is the person who's conducting the assessment does not have to have any specialized training. So it doesn't have to be a doctor or a nurse. It can be like in the military, an officer or an enlisted personnel who has no medical background. So it frees up your very scarce resources to focus on those people that, no kidding, need help. And the other beauty is the algorithm replicates the expert judgment of a psychiatrist. So our assessment is equivalent to someone doing a face-to-face interview with a psychiatrist, which is the gold standard right now for identifying imminent risk. And then if we're connected to a database and we get de-identified outcomes data, that can be fed back into the algorithm. So the algorithm actually learns, and over time our prediction scores will be actually much higher than a psychiatrist. So we've just finished our first integration with the health record out at 4 hospitals in Nebraska and Iowa. So we now are getting de-identified data fed back in to the algorithm.
And not only is it accurate, but your Voi Reach can initiate an active rescue pretty quickly too, if it identifies a problem.
Yeah, so the beauty of Voi Reach is there are other competitors out there. They're all designed to be reactive. So they actually, it's not a live person. It's typically a bot-mediated type of conversation, which is not very engaging. And there's a lot of data that shows after 30 days or so, people disengage because they're not talking to a live person. So we actually use a live person, and the coach can actually manage about 250 individuals. And the reason they can manage that large of a panel is because the AI engine is constantly smart sorting the patient list to let the coach know who's the next person that needs immediate intervention. So the other discriminator between us and our competitors is they're reactive. So they actually have to wait for someone to ask for help. So our tool is designed to be proactive. So the coach can actually, with the AI augmentation, can actually identify a person who may not even be aware that they're going into crisis, and can reach out and contact both the patient and the support network to find out what's going on, can direct them to the hospital if necessary. And then in a worst case scenario, if no one's responding, they can use the GPS data from the patient's cell phone for the coach to contact a local emergency services so they can get out to the location before an event happens. There's data that shows there's about a 10-minute window between suicidal ideation and your first act in a suicide. And our tool is the only one that we've seen out there that is actually designed to break into that 10-minute window.
That's outstanding. Talking about being proactive, if you have a veteran or someone that's high risk, what are some red flags that you can visually see that may be an indicator that there's a problem there?
Yeah, so there's a number of different things. So there's warning signs, and then there's factors. So on the factor side, an individual who has been diagnosed or is suffering from, depression, medical disorders, or substance use disorders, they're suffering from chronic pain, they've had a history of suicide attempts, there's a family history of mental disorder or suicide, there's been exposure to family violence, presence of guns or firearms in the home, being released from prison or jail, stressful life events such as a death in the family, legal troubles, etc., and then interpersonal stressors such as harassment, bullying, discrimination, or relationship problems. So those are all factors, but then the warning signs that someone may actually see indicating that an individual is considering suicide are the person talking about wanting to die or kill themselves, talking about feeling trapped or alone, having feeling unbearable pain or suffering, talking about being a burden to others, giving away, possessions. I'm sure we've all heard stories of people giving away, valued items, saying goodbye to friends, getting your affairs in order, making a plan or looking for ways to kill themselves, either by, internet searches or stockpiling of pills or buying a gun. And then there's a whole bunch of other items too, which I could go into, but those are typically some of the big red flags.
Right. And I believe some of those are on your website, and I'm going to have that website on the show notes so everybody can go there to get more information if need be. So if you do identify someone as high risk, what are some things that you can do to help that situation?
So one of the big fallacies is the belief that if I ask someone who I think may be suicidal, I may actually push them to either consider it or actually attempt a suicide. That is false. The best thing you can do is be direct. Let the person know that you're there to support them. If it's a family member, that you're part of the family, that you love them. So you want to ask directly, are you thinking of killing yourself? It's not easy to ask that question, but there's plenty of studies that show that at-risk individuals, if they're asked that question, it does not increase their risk of an actual attempt or suicide in the future. The other thing you want to do is to keep them safe. So, if you have indications or thinking that this person may be going to have self-harm, take away any potential lethal items that are, available to them, like locking up a gun or putting it away somewhere, pills, etc. Let the person know that you're there to listen and to support them. Acknowledging that you understand that they're in pain, and then you're willing to talk to them may help reduce the feelings of isolation and suicidal thoughts. Help them connect. So, recommend, provide them the resources on how to contact the suicide hotlines or how to get in touch with a doctor. And then stay connected. Just don't feel like after that one talk, you've solved the problem. It's going to be an ongoing problem. So you need to, as a person helping someone, you need to actually stay connected, check in with them. And then one of the fallacy, the other fallacy is, or not a fallacy, but a difficult issue is the person may ask for your silence on this matter. They may divulge something to you and say, but I don't want you to do anything or tell anyone. That's a tough problem to deal with, but you got to ask yourself, if I kept this to myself and something horrible happened, did I make the right decision? So, I would err on the side of, yeah, you may break this person's confidence, but you're going to save their life by contacting, emergency services or, a doctor or whoever to help prevent this person from attempting or completing a suicide.
Right. And that leads me into what not to do in those situations. What are some things that you would like to avoid for sure if you do find yourself with an individual that's at high risk?
Yeah. So first of all, there's a whole bunch of, websites out there that talk about some of the don'ts. So, some of the things is don't say, I know how you feel. You don't know how you feel, that person feels. You're not in their shoes. So don't indicate that you know how they feel. Don't, the macho attempt of get over it. Life's not that bad. Again, you're not in that person's shoes. You don't know what they're actually feeling or suffering from. So don't dismiss it or tell them that it's him or her, that it's easy to get over. Don't point out other, bad events that have happened. And you could, say something like, oh, it could be worse. Again, that's not going to help. The big ones are don't ignore the warning signs. If your hairs on the back of your neck are going up, or you see some of those warning signs we just discussed, don't ignore them. And again, as I mentioned, don't keep it a secret. Even if you've promised this person that you are going to keep it a secret, it's better for you to seek for help and then seek, for
forgiveness.
Yeah, forgiveness at a later point.
Right. So suicide is a sensitive topic. In my community, I think we've lost more to suicide than we have to the two wars that we fought. So that just goes to show the importance of it. Can you speak a bit to the numbers and the percentage of veterans that are dying every year?
Yeah, so the numbers, they've been hard to calculate. There's numbers out there that I think they came out in 2017, at least in the veteran population, of 21 to 22 veterans a day complete a suicide. The numbers, they've gone back and revised some of them, so I'm not sure exactly where the number stands now. I know in 2020, 2021, I think during the COVID, the really crisis part of COVID, the numbers did decrease, but I think they're either back up to where they've been for the last 10 years or actually have slightly increased. But we're, the comparison between a veteran population and the active duty population and a civilian population, the numbers are much more elevated in the military and in the veteran populations.
Right. I was glad you said that, because I've talked to two now about statistical data on where we are with suicide rate. And it seems like it's really hard to get a pin on it because, one, they're categorizing it slightly different, as well as the numbers for the last 2 years aren't out yet.
Yeah, it takes a while for them to do the analysis. Most people, there's a number of groups out there that are named after the number of attempts or suicides that were based off of, I think it was a 2018 VA Veterans Administration or Veterans Affairs publication where the number 22 came up. So
if you'd just like to talk to what Voi's been able to do and the impact that you've had so far, as well as things that you're moving toward currently.
Yeah. So Voi, we're very excited. We're right now in the middle of a fundraise. We are starting to get a lot of traction, and we're getting to the point where I need to hire a number of people. And so we are right in the middle of an active fundraise. The traction we've received, as I mentioned earlier, we have contracts with the U.S. Air Force and the Vermont National Guard, that contract just ended. Those contracts led to a new contract with the Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island National Guard. That contract should start this month in July of 2022. We have an active contract at the Virginia Department of Corrections. They're using it right now. Voi Detect is being used in their intake facility. And because of the success of being able to identify people at risk, they are preparing to do an expansion of that use to 3 additional facilities. And then after that initial expansion, a statewide expansion. We've just signed, we have a contract to provide remote mental health care to all the hospitals in Montana. Montana has the highest rate of suicide in the country. We had done our first big pilot at Billings Clinic, and it was so successful that it led to a statewide, or not a statewide, but an expansion to 12 hospitals the following year, which then has led to this contract for all the hospitals in Montana. We've just signed some letters of intent with different groups. One group that's focused on veteran suicides in Michigan, Minnesota, and Alaska. Another group working with a large labor union to prevent suicides among their union members. We just signed a LOI with a group that's working with Native American and First Nation tribes up in Canada and in the US. The issue that they face is a lot of the reservations are remote. They don't have a lot of resources. So, and they also have high suicide rates and other behavioral health issues. So providing remote mental health care to these organizations will be very important. We're in talks with several other groups to provide our tools to universities and colleges and high schools. Hopefully we'll get that LOI signed in the next week or two. Just got off a call with the Department of Defense right before this call and are talking about some potential opportunities to expand the use in the military. And then once I do our fundraise, I've already identified a whole bunch of key individuals that will join my company. One is a very experienced healthcare executive who will kind of take over my healthcare sales. And another is a woman who is very experienced in working government contracts. She's a clinical psychologist, and she will kind of come on and work on government sales, plus also serve as my chief science officer.
That's exciting. Sounds like you guys are doing some good stuff. So how do we get involved to help? You mentioned some donations. Where do we go to donate? How can we help support you do what you're doing?
Well, so we're doing a normal fundraise. So we're raising funds through a funded round. So if anyone's interested in participating in a normal funded round, please just reach out to me. My information's on our website, www.voi.health. If anyone has any ideas on how we can get our tools into as many hands as possible, so if you are affiliated with an organization that could use our tools, please reach out and let me know. I'd happy to discuss a potential licensing arrangement or a pilot. And then not focused on our company, but there are plenty of organizations in the United States addressing suicide. So there's number of groups that you could volunteer to work with or get employed with if you really want to help try to make a difference. And then again, just be aware of, in your life, those factors that I discussed in the warning signs, and just be alert and be a person who's willing to step forward and provide support and care to your friends and family to help prevent someone from doing something horrible.
Absolutely. And in summary, is there anything you'd like to touch on about your organization or maybe resources out there that, you don't have to have the link. I'll add the link to the show notes. Just anything in closing.
Yeah. So I mentioned, as I said, there's plenty of organizations out there. I'm looking for my list right now just so I don't miss the groups. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, crisis text line. So if you have someone who may be suicidal, there's a crisis text line you can contact. I'm sure there's a number of organizations that work with universities and colleges, the JED Foundation, the Trevor Project, and then the Suicide Prevention Resource Center on the web is a great resource to go and find out, numbers or how you can help. So those are some of the places you can, if you're interested in supporting people or supporting organizations, I would check those groups out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rick. I really appreciate the call, and I love what you guys are doing out there. And once this releases, I'll definitely give you a heads up so you can, I don't know, listen or share. And with that, we're going to wrap things up. I hope you found that informative, and all links to any further information are provided in the show notes. So hopefully you found those helpful. I know I'm not supposed to tell stories. Sorry, Chris. But I can't talk to a Marine pilot without thinking of the time in Iraq where we had a Harrier come in. Harriers are notoriously known for breaking a canopy and then having to jettison it. But we had one land, and the pilot landed with instruments only on a blacked out base. And we were there to safe the ordnance items on the aircraft. But when he finally came out of that cockpit, his eyes were the size of saucers. So I can only imagine the breed of person Rick Johnson is and the other pilots of the Marine Corps. But with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Hope you have a good one. Bye.